Commander Zexhai stood on the bridge of the massive ship called Eternal Harmony. He was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. His eyes looked out at the stars through the big window in front of him. The stars were peaceful and quiet. Everything in the galaxy was calm. For 300 years there had been no big wars. All the different alien races worked together now. They called themselves the Galactic Council. The council had rules that everyone followed. When races had problems with each other, they talked instead of fighting. It was a good time to be alive in the galaxy. Zexhai remembered the old stories his grandfather told him. Stories about the time before the council, when different alien races fought terrible wars. Ships would explode in space. Whole planets would burn, millions would die, but those days were gone now. The galaxy was safe. The council fleet was the strongest military force anyone had ever seen. It had ships from every major alien race. There were the big, heavy ships from the rock people called Granite Lords. There were the fast attack ships from the bird-like Sky Tiers. There were the invisible spy ships from the shadow aliens called Whisper Folk. All these different ships worked together to keep peace. Zexhai's own people, the Vorthans, made the best shields in the galaxy. Their shield technology could stop almost any weapon. The Council fleet used Vorthan shields on all their important ships. This made Zexhai proud. His people were helping keep the galaxy safe. The bridge was quiet except for the soft sounds of the ship's computers. Other Vorthan officers sat at their stations, watching screens that showed everything happening around them. Green lights blinked slowly, showing that all systems were working well. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Lieutenant Kexmar, a younger Vorthan with bright purple markings on his blue skin, walked up to Zexhai. He carried a data tablet in one of his 4 hands. "Commander," Kexmar said in a soft voice, "the daily patrol reports are ready. All sectors are clear. No problems anywhere." Zexhai took the tablet and looked at it. The reports showed the same thing they had shown for months. No pirates, no illegal ships. No fights between different races. The galaxy was working exactly like the Council wanted it to work. "Good," Zexhai said. "Send word to Command Center. Tell them Sector 7 is all clear." As Kexmar walked away, Zexhai thought about how boring his job had become. Not that he wanted wars to start again, but sometimes he wondered what it would be like if something interesting happened. The most exciting thing that had occurred in the last year was when some space traders got lost and asked for directions. He looked at the star charts on his screen. The galaxy was divided into many sectors. Each sector had Council ships watching over it. The sectors near the center of the galaxy were the most important. That's where the big alien civilizations lived. The sectors on the edge of the galaxy were quieter. Not much happened out there. Zexhai's ship patrolled one of these edge sectors. It was called Sector 7. There were a few small colonies here and some trading posts, but mostly it was empty space. The perfect place for a peaceful patrol. One of his officers, a green-skinned alien called Mortag, spoke up from his station. "Commander, I'm getting some strange readings from the deep space sensors." Zexhai walked over to Mortag's station. The screen showed a map of space around them. Most of it was empty, just like always, but there was something new. A small blinking dot at the very edge of their sensor range. "What is it?" Zexhai asked. Mortag's 3 eyes looked worried. "I'm not sure, sir. It appeared about an hour ago. It's not moving, just sitting there in empty space. But it's giving off some kind of energy." Zexhai studied the screen. The dot was very small. It could be anything. Maybe a broken satellite. Maybe some space junk from an old ship. "These things happen sometimes. How big is it?" he asked. "Hard to tell from this distance," Mortag said, "but not very big. Maybe the size of a small asteroid." Zexhai nodded. "Keep watching it. If it starts moving toward any colonies, let me know right away." For the rest of the day, the strange object stayed in the same place. It didn't move. It didn't send any signals. It just sat there in the dark between the stars. The officers on the bridge checked it every few hours, but nothing changed. When the ship's night cycle began, most of the crew went to rest. Only a few officers stayed on the bridge to watch the ship while others slept. HFY decided to stay awake a little longer. Something about the strange object bothered him. Though he couldn't say why, he walked to the big window and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, beyond what his eyes could see, was the mysterious object. He thought about the old days when his grandfather was young. Back then, space was full of dangers. Unknown ships could appear anywhere. Pirates attacked peaceful. Traitors. Wars could start without warning, but those days were over. The Council had made sure of that. They had the strongest fleet in the galaxy. They had the best technology. They had peace treaties with every known alien race. Nothing could threaten the safety they had built. As HFY watched the stars, he remembered something his grandfather once told him. Peace is a beautiful thing, the old Vorthan had said. But it can make you forget that the universe is still full of mysteries, and not all mysteries are friendly. At the time, young HFY had thought his grandfather was just telling scary stories. Now, looking out at the endless space, he wondered if the old alien had been wiser than he knew. The night shift was always quiet. The ship's engines hummed softly. The life support systems whispered as they cleaned the air. The artificial gravity generators made tiny vibrating sounds that most people couldn't hear. It was peaceful, safe, normal, but somewhere in the back of HFY's mind, he had a feeling that this peaceful night might be the last one for a very long time. He shook his head and told himself he was being silly. The galaxy was safe, the Council fleet was strong. Whatever that object was, it was probably nothing important. By tomorrow, it would probably be gone, and they would never know what it was. As he finally headed to his quarters to sleep, HFY took one last look at the stars. They twinkled peacefully in the darkness, just like they had every night for 300 years. He had no idea that somewhere in that darkness, something was stirring that would change everything the galaxy thought. It knew about safety, about power, and about the small race of aliens called humans that everyone had forgotten. The space around the mysterious object began to change in ways that made no sense. The stars themselves seemed to bend and twist. Reality looked like it was being stretched like rubber. Then, with a sound that somehow traveled through the vacuum of space, something impossible happened. The small object that Mortag had detected was not an object at all. It was a hole in space itself. And through that hole something was coming. At first, only a small piece appeared. It looked like the front of a ship, but it was bigger than any ship the galaxy had ever seen. Then more of it came through. And more, and more. The hole in space grew wider as whatever was coming through pushed its way into their reality on the bridge of eternal harmony. Every alarm started screaming at once. The ship's computers had never seen anything like this. The sensors were going crazy, showing readings that couldn't be real. "Commander!" Mortag shouted, his 3 eyes wide with fear. "Something huge is coming through. The sensors say it's impossible, but it's there." HFY ran to the bridge, still wearing his sleeping clothes. What he saw on the screens made his 4 hearts skip beats. The object was growing. No, not growing. More of it was appearing as it pushed through the hole in space. "How big is it?" he asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "Sir," another officer said, her voice shaking, "if the sensors are right, it's already bigger than our entire fleet. And it's still coming through." For 20 minutes, they watched as more and more of the impossible ship emerged from the hole in space. It was dark gray, almost black, with strange patterns carved into its surface. The patterns seemed to move and shift when no one was looking directly at them. The ship had no windows that they could see, but it had thousands of things that might be weapons. Big weapons. Weapons that looked like they could destroy planets. When the ship finally finished coming through, the hole in space closed with another impossible sound. The ship just floated there in the darkness, silent and still. But somehow, everyone who looked at it felt like it was watching them back. "Sir," Mortag whispered, "the computer says that ship is 3,000 kilometers long." "That's bigger than some moons." HFY couldn't speak. In all his years in the Council fleet, he had never seen anything like this. The biggest ships in the galaxy were maybe 10 kilometers long. This thing was 300 times larger than that. Where did it come from? He finally managed to ask. Unknown, sir, came the reply from the science officer. But Commander, there's something else. The ship. It's giving off energy readings we've never seen before. Our computers can't even identify what kind of power source it's using. Before HFY could respond, every communication system on his ship suddenly activated at once. A voice came through, speaking perfect galactic standard, the language all the races used to talk to each other. Attention, the voice said. It sounded calm, almost friendly. But there was something underneath it that made everyone on the bridge feel very small. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Fleet. Terran, that word made HFY's blood freeze. He knew that word from old history books. Terran meant human. But humans had disappeared from the galaxy over 200 years ago. Most people thought they were extinct. We know you're watching us, the voice continued. We can see your ship, Commander HFY of the Vorthan Republic. Don't worry, we're not here to hurt you. We just wanted to let you know that we're back. How did they know his name? How did they know what kind of alien he was? HFY had never told them anything. We've been away for a while, Admiral Chun said. We had some growing up to do. Some learning, some changing, but now we're ready to come home. The communication stopped. The bridge of eternal harmony was completely silent except for the sound of alien hearts beating very fast. Sir, Kexmar said quietly, should we report this to Council Command? Before HFY could answer, the communication system activated again. Oh, and Commander, Admiral Chun's voice said, you should probably tell your council friends about us. But tell them not to do anything stupid. We really don't want to hurt anyone. But we're not the same humans you remember. We're much more than that now. The transmission ended again. This time it stayed quiet. HFY stared at the massive ship on his screen. Humans, after all these years, the humans had come back. But this ship, this impossible technology, this wasn't what humans used to have. The humans he learned about. In history class flew small ships with basic weapons. They were brave, but their technology was simple compared to other races. This ship looked like it was built by gods. Send an emergency message to Council Command, HFY ordered. Tell them we have a situation. Tell them the humans are back, and tell them to send everything we have. As his crew worked to send the message, HFY kept staring at the human ship. It just floated there, dark and quiet. But somehow he knew it was listening to every word they said. Watching every move they made, around the galaxy, other council ships were detecting the same impossible energy readings. Sensor stations on a dozen worlds were going crazy as they tried to figure out what the massive ship was. Scientists were looking at readings that broke every law of physics they knew. In the council's main command center, alarms were ringing. Admirals and generals from every major race were being woken up and called to emergency meetings. For the first time in 300 years, the galaxy was facing something they didn't understand, and in the darkness of space, the massive human ship waited. Inside it, Admiral Sarah Chun looked out at the stars she remembered from her childhood. But she was no longer the same species that had left this galaxy so long ago. None of them were. The humans had spent 2 centuries learning things that other races couldn't even imagine. They had pushed past the limits of normal science. They had become something new. Something more, but deep down, they were still human enough to care about protecting others. Still human enough to want to come home. And they were just in time. Because something else was coming. Something dark and ancient that had been sleeping between the galaxies. The humans had detected it on their journey back. That's why they had returned. Not to conquer, but to protect. The galaxy thought it was safe behind its council fleet and peace treaties. But real safety was about to come from the species they had forgotten. From the humans who had become something impossible. The night the humans returned was the night everything changed forever. The council's emergency meeting lasted for 6 hours. Representatives from every major alien race argued about what to do. Some wanted to try talking to the humans. Others wanted to attack before the humans could do anything dangerous. Most were just scared. Admiral Vexcon of the Granite Lords was the loudest voice for action. His people were strong warriors who looked like walking rocks. They had the biggest guns in the galaxy. "We cannot let one ship threaten our peace," he said, slamming his stone fist on the meeting table. "I don't care how big it is. We have 12,000 ships in our combined fleet. No single vessel can stand against that many." High Counselor Silkarine of the Whisper Folk disagreed. Her people were thin and gray, like shadows that could talk. They were good at staying hidden and gathering information. "We know nothing about their technology," she said in her quiet voice. "They disappeared for 200 years. Who knows what they learned during that time? We should be careful." But fear was stronger than wisdom. After hours of arguing, the council decided to send their entire fleet to deal with the human ship. 12,000 vessels from across the galaxy began moving toward the location where Terra's Wrath waited. Commander Zexhai watched from his position nearby as the greatest military force in galactic history assembled. Ships of every size and shape appeared in the darkness. There were huge battleships that could crack planets. There were fast cruisers with weapons that could cut through any armor. There were support ships carrying enough firepower to destroy solar systems. The fleet formed a sphere around the human ship, with Terra's Wrath at the center. From every direction, alien weapons pointed at the massive vessel. It looked like a metal moon surrounded by angry hornets. Admiral Vexcon's flagship, a mountain-sized ship called Crushing Victory, moved to the front of the formation. His voice boomed across all communication channels. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Vexcon of the Galactic Council Fleet. You will surrender immediately and submit to inspection. You have entered Council space without permission. You will follow our laws or face the consequences." For several minutes, there was no response from Terra's Wrath. The massive human ship just floated in space, dark and quiet. Some of the alien commanders began to think the humans were afraid. Then Admiral Chun's voice came back, still calm and friendly. "Hello, Admiral Vexcon. We remember your people. The Granite Lords always did like to solve problems by hitting them. With rocks, some things never change." Admiral Vexcon's stone face turned red with anger. "You will surrender now, or we will open fire." "Admiral," Chun replied, "we really don't want to fight you. But if you insist on testing us, we'll have to show you why that's a bad idea. Are you sure you want to do this?" "Fire all weapons." Vexcon roared. What happened next broke the minds of every alien. Who saw it? 12,000 ships opened fire at the same time. Energy beams that could melt mountains struck Terra's Wrath from every direction. Missiles that could destroy cities exploded against its hull. Weapons that bent space itself focused their power on the human vessel. The attack lasted for 3 minutes. When the light faded and the space around Terra's Wrath cleared, the alien commanders expected to see debris. What they saw instead was impossible. Terra's Wrath was completely undamaged. Not even a scratch marked its dark hull. The ship hadn't even moved from the force of the attack. "Our turn," Admiral Chun said softly. The human ship began to change. Parts of its hull that had looked like solid metal started to flow like liquid. Gun ports opened that hadn't been there before. Things that looked like engines but weren't engines began to glow with light that hurt to look at. Then Terra's Wrath fired a single shot. The weapon that emerged from the ship didn't look like any beam or missile the aliens knew. It looked like a crack in reality itself. A line of absolute darkness that moved faster than light toward the Council fleet. When it hit the first alien ship, something impossible happened. The ship didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It simply stopped existing. The atoms that made up the vessel came apart and scattered into space as if they had never been put together in the first place. The weapon passed through 17 more ships before Admiral Chun turned it off. 18 vessels that had existed seconds before were now just clouds of loose atoms drifting in space. "Stop," Admiral Vexcon said, his voice shaking. "Stop shooting." But Terra's Wrath wasn't done. More weapons activated. Beams of energy that reached out and grabbed alien ships, holding them in place while other weapons carefully cut them apart. Missiles that appeared inside enemy vessels without passing through their shields. Devices that made space itself twist and fold, crushing ships like paper balls. The humans were not trying to kill the alien crews. Every shot was precise, designed to disable ships without hurting the people inside. But the message was clear: they could have killed everyone if they wanted to. In 17 minutes, the pride of galactic civilization was defeated. 12,000 ships, the most powerful military force ever assembled, were now floating helplessly. In space, some were cut in half but still had working life support. Others were simply turned off, their power systems shut down by weapons the aliens couldn't understand. Not a single shot had been fired at Terra's Roth after that first demonstration. The alien crews were too busy trying to figure out how they was still alive. Is everyone okay over there? Admiral Chun asked, her voice full of concern. We tried to be gentle, but we're still learning how to hold back with our new toys. Admiral Vexcon stared at his command screens in shock. His mighty battleship was dead in space, all its weapons and engines turned off, but his crew was alive and breathing. The humans could have killed all of them, but they chose not to. How? He whispered. 200 years is a long time, Chun replied. We've been busy. We learned things your scientists think are impossible. We built things that shouldn't exist. We became something more than what we were. On the bridge of eternal harmony, Commander HFY watched his sensors trying to understand what they had just seen. The readings made no sense. The human weapons violated every law of physics he had learned in school. Sir, Murtagh said quietly, the computer is asking me what to put in my report. I don't know what to tell it. HFY understood the problem. How do you explain the impossible? How do you write a report about weapons that unmake matter itself? How do you describe a single ship defeating the entire galactic fleet without breaking a sweat? Tell it the truth, he said finally. Tell it. The humans are back. And tell it we're not in charge anymore. Across the galaxy, news of the defeat spread quickly. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders realized that their greatest fleet had been beaten by a single human ship. Everything they thought they knew about power and safety had just been proven wrong, but the humans weren't acting like conquerors. They weren't demanding surrender or taking prisoners. They were just, there, waiting for something. We'll help repair your ships, Admiral Chun announced to the disabled fleet. No one needs to be stranded out here, but we need to talk. Oh. Of us? There are things you need to know about what's coming. As rescue ships began appearing from Terra's Wrath to help the disabled council vessels, the aliens realized something terrifying and wonderful at the same time. The humans were stronger than gods. But they were still human enough to help their former enemies. The question now was, if something scared the humans enough to make them come back, what chance did the rest of the galaxy have against it? The great meeting took place on Terra's Wrath itself. Representatives from every major race in the galaxy came aboard the human ship, though they were nervous about it. Some had never been inside anything so large. Others were afraid of what they might find. What they found was even more confusing than they expected. The inside of Terra's Wrath didn't look like a normal ship. The walls seemed to be alive, pulsing gently with soft light. The floors felt warm under their feet, like walking on living skin. When they touched the walls, some aliens swore they could feel a heartbeat. Admiral Chun met them in a room that was bigger than most buildings. She looked human, mostly. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head with brown hair and kind eyes. But there was something different about her. She moved too smoothly, like she was floating instead of walking. Her eyes seemed to see more than normal eyes should. And sometimes, when the light hit her just right, she looked like she was made of stars. Welcome aboard, she said to the group of nervous alien leaders. I know this is all very strange for you. It's strange for us too, sometimes. We're not exactly the same species you remember. High Counselor Silkarine of the Whisper Folk spoke. First, her gray face was even paler than usual. What happened to you? Where have you been for 200 years? Chun smiled, but it was a sad smile. That's a long story. Would you like to see it instead of hear it? Before anyone could answer, The room around them changed. The walls became transparent, showing the darkness of space. But then images began to appear in the air around them, like watching a movie made of light. The images showed Earth as it used to be, a small blue planet with white clouds and green lands. The aliens saw human cities with simple buildings and basic technology. They saw human spaceships that were tiny compared to what other races had. "This was us," Chun said softly. "Small, weak, curious. We knew we weren't the strongest or smartest race in the galaxy. But we had one thing that made us different." The images changed, showing humans working on impossible projects. Scientists staying awake for days trying to solve problems that had no answers. Engineers building machines that everyone said couldn't work. Explorers flying into dangerous space just to see what was there. "We never knew when to quit," Chun continued. Other races would reach the limits of their science and say, "This is impossible." We would reach those same limits and say, "Let's try anyway." The images showed humans leaving Earth in great ships, heading toward the edge of the galaxy. They were not running away from danger. They were flying toward it, looking for answers to questions no one else dared to ask. "We spent 50 years just traveling," Chun explained. 50 years to reach the places between galaxies, where space itself works differently. Where the rules of physics are more like ... suggestions? Admiral Vexcon interrupted, his stone voice rough with confusion. "Between galaxies? Nothing lives there. It's empty space." Hyun's smile became mysterious. "That's what we thought too." "We were wrong." The images around them showed something that made several aliens gasp in fear. In the darkness between galaxies there were things. Not planets or stars or normal matter. Things that existed in ways that hurt to think about. Ancient intelligences that had been alive since before the first stars formed. "We met them," Chun sighed quietly. "The old ones, being so advanced that they had moved beyond needing physical bodies. They had become part of the universe itself." The images showed humans talking to shapes of light and shadow that constantly changed form. Conversations that lasted for years at a time. Lessons that broke human minds and rebuilt them stronger. "They taught us things," Chun continued. "How to move energy without wires, how to fold space like paper, how to make matter do things it was never supposed to do, how to connect our minds to our machines until we couldn't tell where we ended and they began." High Counselor Sokarina's voice was barely a whisper. "What did they want in return? Nothing," Chun replied. "They were just ... Dord. Imagine being alive for billions of years, with no one to talk to who could understand even the simplest things, you know. We were like children to them, but we were curious children. They enjoyed teaching us." The images showed humans changing. At first they looked normal, but as the years passed they began to merge with their technology. Not in a scary way, but in a way that made them more than they had been. Their ships became extensions of their bodies. Their computers became part of their minds. "We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level," Chun explained. "We learned to draw power from the space between atoms. We learned to exist in multiple dimensions at once. We became something new." Commander Zexhai found his voice. "But why did you come back? If you had all this power, all this knowledge, why return to our galaxy?" Chun's expression became serious. "Because the old ones taught us something else. They taught us about the things that live in the deep dark, the things that even they fear." The images around them changed again, showing something that made every alien in the room step backward. Deep in the empty space between galaxy clusters, something massive was stirring. Something that looked like a cross between a machine and a living creature, but was somehow neither and both. "The Devourers," Chun said, her voice full of worry. "Ancient machines built by a race that died out before our galaxy was even formed. They sleep for millions of years at a time, but when they wake up, they consume everything. Planets, stars, entire galaxies, they turn it all into more of themselves." The images showed what happened when the Devourers had awakened in other galaxy clusters. Beautiful worlds reduced to metal and circuits. Proud civilizations absorbed into the mechanical hive mind. Everything alive becoming part of the endless hunger. They're waking up now, Chun continued. Our sensors detected them stirring about 5 years ago. They'll be here soon. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20, but they're coming. The room was completely silent except for the soft humming of the living ship around them. That's why we came back, Chun said softly. We could have stayed out there, exploring the universe with our new friends. But this is our home galaxy. These are our neighbors. We couldn't just let you face the Devourers alone. Admiral Vexcon's stone face looked confused. But your ship, your weapons. Surely you could just leave again, take your people and go somewhere safe. Chun shook her head. We're not the same humans who left 200 years ago. But we're still human enough to care about protecting others. Still human enough to fight for what's right. Still too stubborn to run away from a fight. She looked around at all the alien faces staring at her. Besides, we learned something important from the old ones. Real strength doesn't come from having the biggest weapons. It comes from working together. From protecting those who can't protect themselves. The images faded away, leaving them in the strange living room aboard Terra's Wrath. So what happens now? High Counselor Sokarine asked. Now we prepare. Chun replied, we share our technology with you. We teach you what we can. We build defenses that might actually work against the Devourers, and we hope it's enough. She paused, looking out at the stars through the transparent walls. The galaxy thought it was safe behind your council fleet and peace treaties. But real safety is going to require all of us working together. Humans and aliens, advanced technology, and old wisdom, new ideas, and ancient knowledge. As the alien leaders prepared to return to their ships, each carrying data crystals full of impossible human technology, they realized their universe had just become much larger and much more dangerous, but they also realized they weren't facing it alone. The humans had come home, changed beyond recognition, but still recognizably human in their stubborn determination to protect others. The night humanity returned was the night the galaxy learned what it meant to have guardians, who had become gods but chose to remain heroes. 6 months passed after the humans returned. The galaxy changed in ways no one could have imagined. The Galactic Council no longer existed as it once did. How could it? You can't give orders to beings who can unmake reality with their thoughts. Instead, a new kind of cooperation began. The humans offered their knowledge freely, but they also made it clear that they would be the ones making decisions about galactic defense. Most aliens accepted this easily. After seeing what Terra's Wrath could do, they understood that the humans were simply operating on a level far beyond anyone else. It would be like children trying to give orders to their parents. Admiral Vexcon, whose pride had been hurt by the easy defeat of his fleet, took longer to accept the new reality. But even he had to admit that human technology was saving lives. Across the galaxy, human medical knowledge could heal diseases that had plagued alien races for thousands of years. Human engineering could build space stations that were completely safe from any kind of attack. Human science could make dead planets come back to life. But the most amazing changes were happening to the humans themselves. More human ships began arriving from the space between galaxies. Each one was different from the last. Some looked like Terra's Wrath, massive and powerful. Others were smaller but seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Flickering in and out of reality, one ship looked like it was made entirely of light. Another appeared to be a living creature the size of a moon, with humans living inside it like friendly parasites. A third ship seemed to be built from crystallized time itself, moving backward and forward through history as it traveled. The humans who emerged from these ships were even more changed than Admiral Chun. Some had merged so completely with their technology that they were barely recognizable as the species that had once lived on Earth. Others looked normal until you tried to touch them, and your hand passed right through their bodies. But despite all their changes, they were still recognizably human in the ways that mattered. They still cared about protecting others. They still made jokes that no other species understood. They still refused to give up when faced with impossible problems. Commander, Zexai found himself working closely with a human named Captain Rodriguez. Rodriguez looked mostly normal, except that his skin sometimes showed glimpses of the star patterns from whatever dimension he was partially existing in. "It's hard to explain," Rodriguez said when Zexai asked about the changes humans had undergone. "We're still us, but we're also more than us, like. Imagine if you could be yourself, but also be part of something bigger at the same time." They were standing on the bridge of a new type of space station that humans and aliens had built together. It used human technology to exist in 17 dimensions at once, making it impossible for any normal weapon to hurt it. "Are you happy?" Zexai asked, "with what you've become?" Rodriguez thought about this for a long time. Happy isn't the right word. We single quotes read ... complete, I guess. Like we finally became what we were always meant to be. But sometimes I miss being simple, miss being just human. Through the station's windows, they could see the new defenses being built around important worlds. Human ships worked alongside alien vessels, creating barrier fields that could stop almost anything. On planets throughout the galaxy, humans were teaching aliens how to build weapons that worked on quantum levels. But the real preparation was happening in the minds of the galaxy's people. The humans had shared their knowledge about the Devourers. Everyone now knew what was coming. Instead of causing panic, this knowledge brought the different alien races closer together than they had ever been before. Granite Lords worked with Whisper Folk to build early warning systems. Sky Tiers shared their speed technology with the slow but powerful Earth Movers. Even the mysterious crystal beings, who had never talked to other races before, came out of hiding to offer their help. "It's funny," Captain Rodriguez said to Zexai. "We spent 200 years learning to become gods. But the most important thing we learned was how to work as a team." As they watched, another human ship arrived in the system. This one was different from any they had seen before. It looked ancient, like it had been built from the bones of dead stars. When it appeared, every other human ship in the area turned toward it in what looked like respect. "That's the consciousness," Rodriguez explained. "Our first ship to fully merge with one of the old ones. The being inside it used to be human, but now it's something else. Something that exists in all times and all places at once." A communication came from the strange ship, but it wasn't transmitted through normal channels. Instead, it appeared directly in the minds of everyone on the station. "The Devourers have awakened," the voice said. It sounded like thousands of people speaking at once, but underneath it all was something that was still recognizably human. "They began moving 3 days ago. They will reach our galaxy in approximately 8 years. 8 years. Less time than anyone had hoped for. Are we ready?" Admiral Chain's voice came from Terra's Wrath, which was positioned at the edge of the system. "No," the consciousness replied honestly. "But we're as ready as we can be. The galaxy has been united. The defenses are in place. Everyone knows what's coming." There was a pause that seemed to last forever. "And we're not the same species that ran away from problems anymore," the consciousness added. "We're the species that stands and fights no matter what the odds." Over the following weeks, the final preparations began. Human technology was distributed to every world in the galaxy. Ancient weapons that had been locked away since the last Great War were brought out and upgraded with human science. The aliens learned that humans had done more than just gain incredible power during their time away. They had also made alliances with other evolved species from distant galaxies. When the Devourers arrived, the galaxy would not face them alone, but the most important change was in how the different races saw each other. The threat of the Devourers had made them realize that their small differences didn't matter. Granite Lord or Whisper Folk, Sky Tier or Earth Mover. They were all part of the same galactic family now, and watching over that family were the humans. Changed beyond recognition, but still stubbornly determined to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Commander Zexai stood on his ship's bridge, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between galaxies, an ancient evil was approaching. But he wasn't afraid anymore. The galaxy had guardians now. Strange guardians who had become something more than mortal, but who chose to use their power to help others rather than rule them. The humans had returned home after 2 centuries of transformation. They had become gods, but they had chosen to remain heroes. And when the darkness came, as darkness always does, the galaxy would be ready. Not because they had the strongest weapons or the best defenses, but because they had something the Devourers had never encountered before. They had humans who refused to give up. The night humanity returned was the night the galaxy stopped being afraid of the dark. Because sometimes the best way to fight monsters is to have monsters of your own. Monsters who choose to be heroes. Monsters who still remember what it means to be human.